The next chapter, chapter 5, is forecasting. Okay, so these are the topics that we will be covering. So let's get into it. The main purpose of forecasting is to estimate what the demand will be in the future. Forecasting can be done in many different situations, but in our context, when we say forecasting, that means we are trying to estimate what the future demand for our products will be. Okay, forecasting techniques can be broadly classified into two groups: the qualitative models and quantitative models. And the quantitative models is further subdivided into two: time series methods and causal methods. Under qualitative models, there are four different methods that are listed here, and we will discuss each of them briefly. Now, when it comes to quantitative methods, the time series models look at historical sales data, okay, just one variable, and then try to understand the fluctuations, the ups and downs in the sales data, and try to replicate those ups and downs into the future and come up with forecasts based on that. Okay, we'll spend a lot of time on that. Now, causal methods, on the other hand, it looks at your sales on the one hand and a bunch of other explanatory variables are called independent variables, and develop a regression model to predict what the Y value will be given those X's. So the X's could be price, competition price, marketing expenses, and economic indicators, and all those kinds of variables can be used to try to predict what the future demand will be. And we've already discussed regression analysis in the previous chapter. So we will not be getting into that in this chapter. So in this chapter, when we talk about quantitative analysis, okay, so we're going to be looking at these time series methods. Okay. So now let's look at the qualitative methods one by one. Okay, the first one is Delphi method. Okay, so Delphi method is an iterative process, often anonymous process. So you get a group of people who will have something meaningful to contribute to developing a decision. So Delphi method can be used for anything, not just for forecasting. But here in this context of forecasting, the decision that we are trying to make is to decide, or decide probably the wrong word, to come up with what the forecast is going to be. So in an iterative process, each respondent will provide an input. Okay, say, okay, this is what I think will be the forecast for the next year. Okay, and then give them reasoning. What is the basis of that estimate? So then the inputs of all the group members are circulated among the rest of them, and then each person gets to look at what other people are saying and revise their own estimates. Okay, and this iterative process will go on until a consensus is reached within the group. So that's pretty much what Delphi method is, and this approach can be used for, as I said, any decision, not just for forecasting. The second method is jury of executive opinion. Here again, it's group process, but unlike Delphi method where the group may include senior management, middle management, and even non-management, anybody who will have something meaningful to contribute. Whereas here in jury of executive opinion, it's high-level managers, and they base their they base their intuition, if you will, based on statistical analysis, and then they come together and talk about it and come up with a final forecast. So that will be jury of executive opinion. Sales for composite is based on the idea that it is the salespersons who will have a good and accurate knowledge about what the market will be like in the future. So allow individual salesperson to to contribute what their best estimate for how much the sales will be, and then those estimates are reviewed for reasonableness. Okay, sometimes salespeople, depending upon the incentive structure, may overestimate or underestimate. So you take a look at the reasonableness, and then you aggregate all the inputs from each of the sales person, Salesforce individuals, and then come up with an overall forecast. The fourth method is consumer market survey, where you actually look at get input from the people who will actually be doing the buying. So you survey your consumers, okay, using a survey instrument, and then based on the information that you gather, you come up with your forecast. This method is time consuming and it is more complex because you have to design your survey instrument, and there are a lot of problems you will crop up if the survey instrument is not designed properly. And also, if you have a very large customer base, then you will only be able to get a sample opinion, and once you have a sample opinion, then you get into the complexity of statistical analysis. So consumer market survey is probably good if your customer base is small and you will be able to get information from each and every one of your customers. Then it'll probably be feasible. Okay, so those are the four methods of qualitative method. So now we will look at time series methods next.